Thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. Joseph McGuire of KSVR is going to talk about website platforms for conferencing. And he has talked about this before, but I understand there's some updates that he can bring us up to speed on. So I'll turn it over to you, Joseph.
Thank you. Well, I was at the initial one 2 years ago, or more than 2 years ago, when we talked about it. And I talked about Squadcast, which is what I had done at the time. And someone else talked about Cleanfeed, which I also have done. And this is why it's going to be kind of casual and just talk about what I have discovered. But one of the things I want to talk about first is how useful this is to stations who can't afford ISDN lines, which I don't think exist anymore, but high speed, or they can't afford a telephone hybrid, which they can be $500, $600, $700. And so that's what we at KSVR, or I at KSVR, uses for talking with people all over the place. And the cost is relatively small. It's a monthly subscription or a yearly subscription. And it's actually, when we first started, it was a little rough. Part of the reason it was rough is a lot of people didn't have, there was this movement at the time that people were moving away from computers to their devices, their pocket, their pads. Well, computers work much better with stuff like this. In many cases, at that time, it wouldn't even work with an iPhone. It sort of worked with an Android if you had Chrome and such like that. But as time went along, and we talked to people, and all they needed was a computer, and all we needed was a computer. So it was easy to connect with these people to do the interviews for Schedule Talks. So what made it very useful, as it was talked about at the time, but I think we want to amplify it, is what it is WebRTC, which stands for Web Real-Time Communication, which is an open standard in a browser that allows you to do two-way communications with video and audio. And then they added, I believe, APIs to allow you to record and such. And so what really made it good, because the internet is okay, it's actually very fast, but people have Wi-Fi. And Wi-Fi, even if you're right next to your Wi-Fi router, can sometimes disappear, noises appear, and things like that. And so this is the one part where it's very good and better than a telephone hybrid, because you're getting the full width, the full bandwidth, as much as the computer's microphone is good. And it's uploading directly to their cloud. So it doesn't have the internet artifacting that what you would hear if on your side was doing it or their side was doing it. Is that clear? I don't want to be unclear. Okay. Anyway, so that's one part of this. The other part of this is the second part of this is the telephone hybrid has a very narrow bandwidth of sound, because the telephone has a very narrow bandwidth of sound. And even a lot of microphones on computers are better than a telephone. Like, for instance, Stephanie, you're down in your basement, your computer microphone sounds pretty good. It certainly sounds better than a telephone. And so you can, in most cases, I'd say 90% of the cases, you get better sound. And if you know how to do some equalization, you can make it even sound better. And the third thing is you can have multiple people. one of the things I had problems with the telephone hybrid was I could only have one person. And if you could figure out a conference call, you could have more than one person. And then some people would use cell phones, and cell phones are terrible in the first place in a lot of cases. And so you could have more than one person. And all of this applies to, except for the internet artifacting, all this applies if you use this as a live feed for going on the air live. If it's live, you have to put up with internet artifacting or internet noise. But you could be recording it, and then when you upload it, you would have all that gone. And the fourth thing, and this is sort of from the technical aspect, each person is on their own track. So like we remember we did Reaper, and you could have multiple tracks. And so if you had problems with latency, like someone, latency where you have a silence between question and answer, in Reaper or any other program, you could take that out. It sounds like there was no latency.
You can do that with Reaper and Squadcast.
Reaper and any of these WebRTCs that have multiple tracks, one track per person.
Because okay. Does that includes Cleanfeed too?
That includes Cleanfeed.
Okay.
And I'll talk about Cleanfeed in a minute.
Okay.
Anyway, so those are the big things that are important and made it pretty easy to do interviews. Now, there is actually a fifth big thing, and this all depends. You can, just like Zoom, you can talk to anybody anywhere. We had 2 interviews over the last 2 years from Australia. The telephone long distance would have been nasty. And so for the most part, it sounded like they were on their computers, so it wasn't perfect. But they sounded just like I was talking with them. My interviewer was talking with them. And there wasn't actually any latency either, or not a lot. So for your $10 a month or $20 a month, depending on how many hours, you can call and you can talk to anyone. And so that to me is one of the reasons why I think the hybrid is dead. Because it just works better, can give you a better sound depending on input. And I remember when we did this 2 years ago, there was one person or one station that would send microphones out to people.
Yes, that's right. That was the outcasting.
Yes.
Yes.
And so I have a great recommendation for people who might want to do that. It's called the AT2005 from Audio-Technica. And a kit is $129. It's not that expensive.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
And or if you just want to get the one with just the stand, it's $79. But the kit comes with an arm and it comes with headphones. It's really great.
Wow. That's awesome. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if I bought stock in Audio-Technica, I probably couldn't talk about them because then I'd have a vested interest. But so, as Stephanie knows, I do Radio Theater Project. I do radio theater. And like Skagit Talks interviews, I had to figure out how to continue doing radio theater without having a studio. And in the world of audio drama, they have, before COVID, they did things like people would send in their lines and then an engineer like me would mix them together and stuff like that. I don't like that. So that's where I use Cleanfeed. Now, Cleanfeed, for people, specifically for people who just want to do interviews live on the air, Cleanfeed works probably the best because there's a free service and it's audio only. And so, and you can have as many people. And I've discovered that audio is when you add video to the bandwidth, it sometimes can drop the internet down. I'm not saying in the 2 years, there have been times when, specifically if a person like is working for the county government using a county computer that's locked down, they're used to using Zoom. So every so often we'd have to switch over to Zoom. And you could probably use Zoom but just as an aside, they recently dropped the 2-person 30-hour limit to 40 minutes like everything else.
Oh, really?
Yes, they started doing that in May.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So Zoom doesn't have that cachet of at least doing a one-on-one person interview live on the air. I really do not recommend using Zoom as a recording tool because they really compress their audio. And anyway, they fixed the microphone problem, but they still don't think audio should be worth anything. And that's the other thing I want to talk about in Cleanfeed, and whether it's free or not, and all the other WebRTC, is it's a high resolution 48K, 16 or 24 bit. So you're getting full resolution. Whereas Zoom is still 32K and 16 bit and highly compressed wise. Anyway, so with Cleanfeed, it's like a little mini studio. It's got the ability to control the volume on each person's track. And I wanted the individual tracks, so we pay $22 a year. But that's their nonprofit rate. They do have a nonprofit rate. I think it's $32 if you're not a nonprofit. And I'm not selling any particular organization. That's whatever people can investigate themselves and decide. And I'll give some of the, anyway, and it has one thing that's very good for radio theater is it has a pause button. None of the other WebRTCs have a pause button. So if I need to pause and do a little audio direction for people, then I can continue on or something like that. And then, but its problem is its host recorded. In other words, internet artifacting comes in as well, is recorded. But I don't care because I just have a person reread the line if I hear that at the end of the scene. And so that's why I like to use things like Squadcast and Zencast and those for radio, for interviews, recorded interviews, because then I don't get the internet artifacting, and I don't mind using it for Cleanfeed. Cleanfeed because I can have as many people in there as I want.
Internet artifacting is like an extra sound.
Oh, it's sort of, sometimes it sounds like a spling.
Okay.
Sometimes it's dropouts. Those are the two major ones. Sometimes it's just a little bit of noise. It's buffering is actually what it is.
Okay.
And latency, that's a big thing if you have a problem. But, like I said, we had a little bit of latency in Australia. So the internet has actually improved a lot since we started 2 years ago. Anyway, so what I'd like to talk to, so when we did this 2 years ago, I found, because I just did what I usually do when we started, it was, oh, yes, BG?
I had a question. What you said was that you Zencast and Squadcast are best for interviews when you're talking to just one person?
No, multiple people.
Oh, okay.
That's what I'm going to get at, and that's a good question. That's what I was going to get to in my next thing. So thank you. And so when I searched, I went and typed into Google looking for a remote recording type thing and found several. And I chose Squadcast just because it seemed interesting, and I don't know. And part of what I like is Squadcast had a cloud service. You didn't have to put it to Dropbox or Google Drive, so you didn't have to have those services. Things like Zencast or Zencaster, they do have a free service, but it's only in MP3s that they download. You have to have a Google Drive or something like that.
So you're saying Squadcast has its own version of that already?
Yeah, it's a cloud. Yes, it automatically uploads into a cloud.
Okay.
And so we used that for a number of years. But I found Squadcast, as an example, had some little problems with it. And if you wanted video, not that I cared, if you wanted video, it cost extra. Eventually, they didn't have it at first, but then they put it in. So as I am wont to do, I typed into Google looking in to see if there was any additions to these. And I found a new one called Iris, called iris.fm. And I'm going to share the screen.
Okay. I don't think I've heard of this one.
Yes, not a lot of people have. So let me see, which one do I, oh, here it is. I'm just sharing the window. So,
Okay.
So here's Iris. So Iris is the same thing, and it had the good functions. It has its own cloud that you can upload. And as you see here, here's all the recorded shows that are in the cloud. And they don't seem to have any limitation on how long you can store them up there until you decide to delete them. And now again,
the free version?
No, there's no free version for this.
Okay.
But it's for 2 hours. And if you tell them you're a nonprofit, I think it's like $7.20 a month.
Okay.
And the 2 hours rolls over.
Oh, okay. Nice.
I believe it does. Anyway, and so the other thing, it was kind of interesting because it was kind of really brand new when I entered into it, and I used it for another purpose before I decided to have it done for KSVR. And so they were kind of rolling out things, additions as I was using it. And one of the things they didn't have, the Squadcast had, was what they call rooms.
Okay.
And then they added it. So these are all the interviewers that I have in my tool chest. And so when you see, oops, that's not it. When you name the room, you just give it a room name, whatever you want, and a room URL. And then when you send a link, it's not something arcane, it's actually the name of the room.
Oh, okay.
Squadcast had a problem is it used these code numbers like AQ5ZDY. And the other thing is that video came with the system if you want to have video. So like, for instance, if you look at this right here, you see there's, this is low resolution video.
Okay, cool.
But you can actually click on high resolution video. I turn that off because that means it has to upload, and then some people's computers and internet connections aren't as good. But each one of these, so you get a WAV file and you get an MP3 file.
Oh, nice.
And you can download, this is sort of the composite of the interview, and there's the people and so forth. And then it has another, yes?
Oh, I was just going to say it's nicely organized.
It is. And then it has another function that I like really a lot, is you can create team members and you can send them, you can turn them into recorders or recordists. And then you don't have to be there. They become the person who can set up the interview and host.
Oh, cool, cool.
And you don't have to give them admin privileges. It's just.
That's
And
nice.
and so it also only it'll unlike Squadcast, which allowed 4 people, this
Mhm.
allows 8 people.
Oh, wow.
And another function of Iris is in the recording, you can turn off the host and turn them into what they call a producer. So I have 2 people. I don't interview people. I just produce interviews. And so I have an interviewee, and I'm just generally a flat line listening. So I can set it up to just click through and set myself up as a producer and not record me.
Oh, nice.
Yes. Not that it really matters or anything, but it's just why
Right.
have extra.
Yeah, yeah. That's really cool.
And so I won't say that other WebRTC companies don't have these functionalities, because I've never used any of the others.
Mm.
Like Squadcast has a cloud. Zencaster has a free service with MP3s only.
Mm-hmm.
And so but I discovered Iris and switched over, and I've been much happier ever since.
Mm.
But back to the original concept of this, now I'll stop sharing here. Back to the original concept is that this replaces the telephone hybrid. And I think it replaces less expensive. You can set up a subscription, use it for, a few months, stop the subscription if you're not going to be using it, restart it again. It's sort of like any other subscription service. You can churn them. As a matter of fact,
Yeah.
Cleanfeed says you can go back to the free service anytime you want.
That's nice.
So if you really want all the bells and whistles of Cleanfeed, you pay for $22 for 1 month, and then you go back. And one of the things about Cleanfeed is when you do the free service, they're mixed into one mono file. So there's no multiple tracks. And if anybody who's done editing knows that multiple tracks is easier to use than a single track with different people.
Oh, that's good to know about Cleanfeed,
Yes.
because I've only used the free one. Okay.
Yes.
It looks like Marie, do you have a question or comment?
Yes, go ahead. I'm pretty much done. I'm just waiting for questions.
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with this. When you talk about individual tracks, you're talking about people who are calling in and there's a track for each call-in person?
Yes.
How do they do that?
Well, that's a good question.
So if you have 2 people talking at once.
So it basically, remember, okay, I guess this is a good explanation. I should talk about this. What is happening with the WebRTC is each person's computer is recording. With Cleanfeed, it's recording on my side, but it's set up to record each track. I don't know how they technically do it, but that's what they do. And let me see if I can give an example.
Does Zoom do that by any chance?
Yes, it does actually. It's a preference under Zoom, in their preferences under recording. It says record a separate audio file for each participant. So yes, Zoom does do that as well.
Have you by any chance used Zoom in that way?
Unfortunately, yes.
And how did it work out when you were editing?
Well, it worked out fine. But the reason I don't like Zoom is because, do you know anything about audio compression? That's where they make the file. They really crush it down. And do you know anything about sampling rate?
No.
Okay, like a CD is 44,100 sampling rate. They sample it down to 32,000. So it's not even CD quality. And you might not notice the difference, but I do know the difference. I know it's there. And so with the, so let me show you though. I was going to show you, let me call it up. Recent project. No, not that one. There it is. Where are you? Oh, it's coming. Okay, now I will share the screen. So as you see, this was a music interview with a young women duo called the Accidentals. And they were actually, they were on one track because they were talking from the same room. Mm. Only they both had microphones, not like this, but microphones like this. Okay. And so you'll see, I'll get closer. And you see, this is Gregory Sweet, the interviewer. Here's the interviewees, the Accidentals. Here's his intro. Here's them saying hello. I can do this.
And it looks like you're doing that one on Reaper.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to stop sharing.
Oh, that's.
Well, the reason is that oh, never mind. Can't do that. I set it up. Anyway, I recently found out a few months back that you can share audio over Zoom calls.
Okay.
But anyway, so this is them, and so that's what I mean by individual tracks. So here's the interviewer, here's the interviewees, and you see how easy it is to say adjust their volume and they're making sure that they sound good. And if there's any if someone's playing with their keyboard, I can edit it out between segments and such like that.
Right. It makes it a lot less easier to edit out things if
a lot more easy. Yes.
It's sometimes, that ambient sound can get intertwined in someone else's words. Yeah.
Yes. And you were talking about someone talking over each other. You can actually untangle them.
Right.
I've done that.
I am so surprised.
Well, that's why I'm not going back into the studio with Radio Theater Project. That's why even if I wanted to, we actually upgraded our recording studio, and added a board that actually records each microphone on their own track. And so, because I wasn't going back to single track editing.
Yeah. And you said with, you found out recently with Zoom, you can share the audio?
Yes.
So if you had several musicians who wanted to play together, then in sharing the audio, everybody can hear everybody else at the same.
Well, okay, what I mean is by sharing audio, if I had set this up, I should have set this up. Sharing audio from applications on your computer across the internet to everybody else's Zoom call. So if I wanted to play back that interview, in the old days, I'd have to put the microphone at the speaker. Now it just goes across cleanly to everybody's Zoom call.
Right.
Is that clear?
No.
Oh.
I'm sorry, I'll look it up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah,
First?
so after you do your recording and you download it, you're downloading it it's downloading into separate tracks, right?
Yes,
Okay, so you can use, because I'm a Pro Tools person, so.
you can use Pro Tools.
Okay.
You can use any digital audio workstation.
Does it enhance the audio any? I mean, I know we're just on these little computers with these little mics, but does it offer any enhancement or what?
Actually, it does.
Okay.
They have a button, and so did Squadcast. Squadcast sort of partnered with Dolby, and they also raised their prices. That was the other reason why I decided to leave. But they have a mastering button.
What exactly is the sample rate? Is it 44.1 that you're downloading, or is it 48?
I believe it's 48K.
Okay.
And I believe it's 24-bit.
Oh, 24-bit. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
But that one you'll have to investigate. I believe so. I know that Cleanfeed is 48 and 24.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
Oh, yes. But for people who know how to enhance, yeah, I of course say I just download the raw file and do the best I can.
Right. Okay.
Any other questions?
Well, I guess soon we'll be able to record a band over the internet, huh?
You could. Now, that leads to a good point. Because I have two people who do interviews for the radio show, musicians interviews.
Mhm.
And over the 2 years, we discovered some musicians understand technology and some don't. Like the gals who did the accidentals, they had an interface with 16 channels. They are using an SM7 Shure and a SM58 Shure, and you can't tell that they were not in the studio.
Okay.
And Greg, he uses he's in Canada right now. He uses one of these, but when he's at home, he has a pod mic with a Mackie interface, and I have to do just a little bit of room reverberation, a little bit, but I have people be very close to their microphones, and it sounds like they were in the studio. But we had people who, it's like there is a difference. In, like I'm sorry, I forgot your name already.
Morris.
Morris, thank you. Morris, your microphone isn't all that good.
You mean what you're hearing right now?
What I'm hearing right now, it's a little on the fuzzy side.
Yeah, that's because I'm just on the computer. I have this plugged in.
Well, yeah, that would we say.
Yeah,
I always say to people, I say, if you can, use a
yeah.
USB interface or a USB mic.
Right.
And
if I was doing an interview, I would have that mic plugged in, and
absolutely.
I would have a virtual mixer where I could actually equalize it and make it sound radio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in the case of Stephanie, her microphone actually sounds pretty good.
I wonder, I wonder what the difference is.
Well, it all depends on the kind of computer
Just
you have.
the kind of computer.
And also helps that if you're in so like he's in you've got more rugs and
I have more sound absorbing.
Yes,
yeah, I've got carpet in here and all. Yeah.
So you sound a little better. We interviewed a guy who was on his computer and he was in his car. It sounded really good. Cars are really great places to do.
A lot of people do that. Yeah, for like podcast stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and I think one last little thing is to talk about phones and tablets and things like that. They've actually gotten better. It was always Safari and Apple that was the problem because they were sort of out of step with WebRTC. It took them a while to get up. But as far as I no, they you can now, and I have actually had some people on their phone do it, but sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But it always works on a computer. There's a company called Riverside. They actually built an app, so you can try that. And that has an app, but I've always have a problem with the idea is you have to tell people to download an app, because a lot of people, they don't want to do that, stuff like that. And
Because of security?
I guess I don't really want to ask them to download an app as opposed to use something they already have on their whatever, a browser.
Gotcha.
And makes it easier to do. And the last thing, I guess, would be to talk about the browser. It has to, does everybody know, everybody knows Chrome, right? You know that there's a open source version of Chrome called Chromium. Opera, Brave, Microsoft Edge are all what are known as Chromium browsers. They're based on Chromium. They will all work with WebRTC transparently. So when I send out an email to people, not knowing what kind of computer they have, and by the way, Microsoft Edge is for Mac and Windows now. And I say in the email, I says, use Chrome or Microsoft Edge. So if they're Macintosh, they can download Chrome, or most people do already download Chrome. And if they're Windows, they don't use Chrome, then they just can use Microsoft Edge.
Oh, okay.
And that way it covers the field. But it does seem to work with the most modern Safari browser for Monterey. But I haven't really tested it. I always hesitate to, because I've learned how to, so one of the things that I always have had the problem with is someone come along and it's not working, no video or no audio or something. The first thing it says, are you using Firefox?
Really? I didn't know that.
Yes. Well, Firefox really doesn't work well with these.
Okay.
Because they use an entirely different. And so they go, yes, I am using Firefox. Well, I didn't say this, but you obviously didn't read my email. Can you download Chrome? Well, yes, I guess I can. After that, it becomes just fine.
Interesting. Okay, so Chrome or Chrome-esque browsers. Chromium. Okay.
Yes.
Bruce.
Bruce.
I have a related question.
Mm-hmm.
Like WBAI does a lot of call-ins, and people will call in with their cell phone. I think they're just dialing in.
Yes, that's true.
A regular, and sometimes the sound from the phone is really bad.
Yes.
Is there any kind of program that would real-time correct the audio, even if it sounds a little robotic, so you can understand what the guy's saying?
Not really well. We actually, before the pandemic, we bought a new hybrid, a telephone hybrid that says that it does some error correction and stuff like that. But as some people have heard me talk about this, you can't make bad good, no matter how hard you try.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't looking for audio quality so much as maybe intelligibility. So even if the guy sounded like something out of a science fiction movie,
that to me is a definition of bad. And you, as far as I know, you can't. It can help a little bit, and that's because they're using a cell phone. Cell phones are notorious because of the cell structure, or the way the radio signals go through the cell towers. Cell phones are notorious for having bad sound.
Right. Okay.
So there's another answer And so you can use, because things like Iris, or you can use not Rivendell, I get confused, Riverside has an app, then they can use the Wi-Fi or their cell, but they're not using it for communications. They're using it to send digital information over, which happens to be sound, and they'll sound much better.
What were the two things you said? Riverside and
Riverside has an app, and Iris, and I think maybe most others will use a cell phone browser.
And Iris has an app?
No, it uses the cell phone browser.
Okay. And what about Skype?
I don't know much about Skype, except that I don't know anything about Skype because I've never been very successful in using it.
Okay.
Or Microsoft Teams or WebEx or the other ones that uses a computer app to do this kind of conferencing. So that's the big difference between WebRTCs and Zoom and those others, is that they created an app that does all the work for you. And the people who use WebRTC are using what's built into the browser as a specific standard.
So Skype, Teams, WebEx, and those other ones, they're not WebRTC programs?
As far as I know, not. They are specifically got a application, because you have to download Zoom. You can do it within a computer, that might be WebRTC, or within a browser, but it's more stable and easier to use when you download their app. And it's spendier than Iris. Any other questions?
I just thought I'd mention that if anyone hasn't seen, if you want to go a little more in depth in some of these programs that Joseph has talked about in the past, you've done one on Reaper. You've done one on, did you do one on Squadcast?
No, I didn't do one on Squadcast specifically.
Okay.
I did one on, did I do one on Ocean Audio? I think
yes,
I did.
yes, you did. You did
Yes.
one on Ocean Audio.
Yes.
And
then I did one on loudness.
yes. Yes, that's a good one to look at too. So yeah, those are on the Pacifica Network site. You can see them in the main menu. Just thought I'd mention that too.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I think that I didn't want to blow my own horn.
Does anyone else have any other questions?
And, one of the things I can offer to people if they need a little help getting started, I can help.
Nice.
I've been meaning to say that, if you want to get started with Reaper, or if you want to start with these things that I've talked about, I wouldn't mind setting some time aside to help out.
Oh,
Get you
thanks,
started.
Joseph. That's awesome. And if someone's watching on recording and you don't have Joseph's email, you can email me and we'll get you in touch. Okay. Well, thank you. This was great.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks
I
a lot.
enjoyed it.
Very good, thank you.
Oh, good.
A lot.
You
I
bet.
might have to look some of the words up in the dictionary to begin with.
Well, I just looked up WebRTC and I thought it was real-time chat, but it was real-time communications.
Well, that's where I'm going first.
Yeah, that's an interesting. I didn't even know either. Yeah, to lump those in separately than like something like Zoom, which takes an application. I didn't even think about that before, so I appreciate that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
in some ways that makes it a little more stable because, you're using the full power of the computer instead of having it part of a browser. But
I'm kind of disappointed because I was going to go back to Firefox. rather than continue with Chrome, but I guess not.
Well, there's always Brave or Opera.
Or Edge, you said?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks, everybody. It was good to have you.
It's good to see everybody, and I'll think of another thing to talk about sometime soon.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anytime.
Okay.
All right. Well, and yes, thank you again, Joseph, and everyone enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you again, everybody. Everyone stay safe.
Take care.
Bye.